Well, okay. Sinadapi. Nistu Makoyo Sakoyi. Nistu means my name. Is Makoyo Sakoyi. It's my second Blackfoot name. Nixista Anista, that means my mother, is Yuskriptadaki, yellow flower woman. I'm going to introduce in my language and translate. Ninna Anista means my father was Monokini Pete NewBreast. Um, and as I'm learning, we should always speak in our language. Just speak only English is not healing. Anyway, so Naxista Anista ya is my grandparents. Sam NewBreast Sr., who was born in 1900, and he passed away in 1987. And then my Awatski, my mom's mom, was born in 1906. And Awatski passed away when she was 66. Atstanikiwa, which was Sam NewBreast's wife, means kills close, and my sister Lori, my baby sister Lori, carries that name. My grandma gave her name at birth. And it's interesting because a lot of our women were given warriors' names, and the warriors' names was to fortify them and to give them warrior status in their life. That was just a common thing to do with little girls born. Little girls were given warriors' name, and then it gave them the spiritual protection so that they lived a long, long time. So, Atstanikiwa. And it's interesting because the translation of Atstanikiwa in Blackfoot is that you move very close to your enemy and that you look them in the eyes very close before you take their life. So you kill close and you honor their life before you take it. And so that was my grandma Agnes Ironpipe's name. And she was the midwife, again, that delivered all the babies on the south side of our reservation. And the last baby she delivered was Snake Comes at Night, who has since passed. And he lived up around the British Columbia area, where the 215 children's bodies were just found. And I have a grandpa that we're very proud of. So we're very proud of our blood that comes from Europe. And his name was Manly John Cooper. And, you know, we're in a day and age where we can, through Ancestry.com, so we found all our white relatives. And it's been cool because in 2009, we took my Uncle Gerald Cooper. His Indian name is Old Voice. And my aunt, Carol Top Nut, she and my daughter at the time and our Chihuahua, and we went and met our white relatives near Flandreau, South Dakota. And it was very, very healing. And so it is possible, you know, go to find out where your white blood comes from and go meet your relatives. It was very... I've never seen my mom get quiet because she was meeting her dad's people, and they were vibrant. You know, they had homesteaded, they were raising corn, they had cows, they they had one of those work ethics. So the 74-year-old cousin that we got to meet, they're the kind that work 7 days a week. You know, so now I understand how mom and dad having the Indian work ethic. You know, they didn't have social media. We never saw television till we were like 8 years old. We finally bought one of those black and white televisions. So my pronouns are she, her, and old school. So That's so some of my introduction, and we just been one of the things of healing is if you can go back, like with the Maori people can go back 50 generations and verbally name all of the generations. And so today's Power Hour is sponsored by Seattle Indian Health Board. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, all the team over there. Thank you, Esther Lucero. Thank you, Dr. Annette Squintimkin, Jill, all of the staff there, because you have really embraced Native Wellness Power Hour and the things that we're doing around healing. And so we just, they're sponsoring the Power Hours, and we'd like to acknowledge them. And guess what? It's week 63. We've had 63 consecutive. In the beginning, it was 7 days a week, but we went to Monday through Friday, having the Power Hour. And so I am your facilitator today. And I have to say, it is such an honor. And where am I? I'm at the headquarters of the Native Americans for Biden. Thank you, Yvette Joseph, for I'm heading to a medicine camp with Seattle Indian Health Board. And so, you know how Indians are, we got to have good Wi-Fi. So I call my friend Yvette, hey, can I do it from your headquarters? Because there's Wi-Fi. And I come from rural Montana. And half of rural Montana does not have Wi-Fi. So that's why some of our people cannot have their voice out there. I just saw talking about digital colonialism. Think about in 2005, if you looked at the continent of Africa with all their tribes, there was just over 2% of all the Africans had access to Wi-Fi. And jump up to like around 2018, because they had put a broadband in the water around Africa that bumped it up to almost 28%, 30% of Africans now have access to the internet. That is a jump, because that means they can watch Native Wellness Institute Power Hour. They can see other people of color. They can see the healing. They can see the world. So think about that. Just, you know, we have 584 tribes, and we have big land base, and the big land base tribes. We have 8 tribes in Montana. The big land base, I was just thinking out at Crow and Northern Cheyenne. You could drive right up to Northern Cheyenne to the border of the res, and you got on the res and there was no Wi-Fi. We'd have to run down to the Boys and Girls Club and stand in one corner, and you could get cell service. So talk about digital colonialism and keeping people of color not in the know, or keeping people of color from access to the internet. Okay, so we'll stop there. I just wanted to invite you, wherever you are, you know, to would you please go get your sweetgrass, or your high cedar, or your cedar, flat cedar, or your sage, or I know Mike Duncan and the crew out there, if you could light some of your California sage. And I just say, because what we have to do is make a journey in this hour from our head to our heart. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes our ego edge God out, and our conniving, which is something that we've learned in trauma, and our master manipulators are good at it right now, because they're all up here, and they gently are making, in this transformation during the pandemic, in these last 63 weeks, making a transition to the heart. And I asked you today because I wanted to speak about the recent occurrence of finding 215 First Nation brown children's bodies that have just been discovered in British Columbia. And I just, put in the comments. I'm not going to look at them and respond to them. I'm just going to set the tone for today for healing. But please put the names of any relatives that you have that were missing and murdered in a boarding school throughout Canada, in the residential schools as they're called, on the reserves. Or if you know any of your relatives that were at Chamawa, any of your relatives at Haskell, and any of the ones at Riverside, and any of the boarding schools in between, because we're at a remarkable time where we're actually, Creator is somehow gifting us these awarenesses of truth. We have, for our African American brothers and sisters and our BIPOC and our Maroons. Maroons are half Native American and half African American. We've had our brother George Floyd, who has brought us a tremendous healing for our nation. And now look at what has happened for our Native Americans. And, when you're lighting the smudge, because when I first seen it, I couldn't look. I got triggered because both my parents were tortured in the boarding school on the Blackfeet Reservation, and then all my relatives in Cardston, around Lethbridge, all the way up to Sixikai, were more and more stories. When I do work there, I see the second generation and the third generation. It's almost like ACE scores, adverse childhood effects. You can look at the ACE scores and you can see how it translates into 2021, and also predictors of the future. But guess what? We can stop it. We can intervene in it. And that's, Native Wellness Institute. We come to you, our mission is to keep the teachings of our ancestors alive. And so we'd like to talk about some of what those teachings are in this hour. But I'd like to, there's good work that's been done. I just got a call from our local Great Falls Tribune who wants to interview me, and several people because they saw the post about telling the truth. And so I wanted to give you some resources so that you could learn from what has already been done. So one of the amazing, there's so much amazing work right now, and it isn't, as an Indigenous person, we're not trying to compete, because one of the on-colonizing things is to not compare pain or compete that this study is best practices. Even though they make us do it with our funding and stuff. But I just wanted to alert you to something that was done with a processes of elders, that was done with prayer, that was done with ceremony, that was done with interviewing 6,000 First Nation natives that were brutalized in residential school. And so it's called the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in throughout Canada. And in Canada, what was done, and it comes from, and I'm just gonna hold it up because I would, if you want to do your own personal healing, read it a little bit at a time. You can see mine. This came out in 2015, and when I first started reading it, and I would read a little part, and I'd have to put it down. I'd have to go get my face painted, go to a ceremony. I'd have to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, or I'd have to do my own going out in the woods, laying out on the ground. I would have to call my sponsor. I would have to do all of the things that, the things that we've been doing during this pandemic to keep us healed, to keep us in a self-care. I would have to pay attention to sleeping good. I would have to pay attention to eating good. I would have to, it's like your emotional IQ. Because sometimes people are intelligent, but their emotional IQ is not too good, in which that means to self-regulate and to bring yourself to a peaceful state no matter what's going on. And anyway, so this, let me tell you a little bit about this, because my experience with this healing effort in Canada, where the 215 babies and children were found, it was in the 70s, and it was in British Columbia. And they found that there was this group of 30 people that came together in the 70s. And some of them were from the 60s scoop, which means in the 1960s they just scooped up Native American children and they were put into white homes, like white foster homes. They were put into the system. Like many of our children that can't be taken care of by their family, and Child Protective Services gets them and puts them into the system. So with those 30 individuals in Canada, and that's why I'm just going to keep holding this book up for a minute, it's important because they went and they started talking to all those that were in the residential school with them. And they found 700 who were raped or sexually assaulted by the one priest. And that began a healing movement. That began the Healing the Spirit Worldwide. That began the Healing Foundation that was given money by the Canadian government. And it began a movement that trickled down into the United States. And it coincided with people starting to go to treatment 40 years ago. It produced the Thunderbird Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in Seattle, and there's many more that out of that. In our area, we had the Sheridan Treatment Program, which Jack Pipe, Bonnie Pipe, John Spence, Gordon Balcourt, Melinda NewBreast, who is my second mother. I was raised by her. In our culture, all your aunties are your second mothers, and in our culture, all your uncles are your second fathers. And so I didn't realize that until I started meeting people in nuclear families where they're just pitiful. They only had a mother and a father. But I had mothers and I had fathers. And I'm just saying, one of the things that we can do in the healing, because like as your children and as your descendants, as everyone hears the story, there's something about it that just hits us in our heart. And it just, we want to know the truth about it. So this Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out of that healing effort that started in the 70s. And what was good, and this is something we need to think about in 2021, is they went out and they interviewed 6,000 survivors of residential schools. And when they interviewed those 6,000 First Nations people, they wrote their stories. This is the final report, but there's another 7 volumes where they actually have all of their testimony and all of their story. And I'm sharing this because in the United States, or the lower 48, and in Alaska, we should also document everyone's story that's ready to talk. And those that aren't ready to talk, then we should start the healing process by which they could build trust, where they can begin to tell their story. And it's listening to the stories, hearing the stories, letting it trigger with you. Because we've all been triggered with these 215 Native babies bodies being found. It has triggered all of us. I want to finish talking because after those 6,000 interviews, there was also an apology. An apology on behalf of the Jesuits and an apology on behalf of the ones who did the damage. And this apology was attached to some healing money, and this apology was attached to some kind of compensation for those who were in residential school. I must say though, but in order to get it, you had to go like before a court. You had to go before a court to see if you got awarded the money. And it's interesting because, for people that money is their God versus people that, Ishtabatapiop or Tinkashala or even Buddha or whoever has a different kind of God, that became, just like such behavior. They found people out on the streets, and they would, because their name was on the list, and then they would get the resources, and so their family would take care of them, and then when the resources were gone, would just let them go back to the streets. Whew, that's a lot. So, keep breathing. I was just thinking we should have had Thosh, teaching us inhaling 5 seconds, holding it 6 seconds, and letting it out 7 seconds. All of those self-regulation, all of those things that Native Wellness Institute is always teaching you for self-care. So when those 6,000 were interviewed, what is the cool thing of it is there was 94 recommendations. Like, if you go to Canada, there's all these wellness centers. They stopped calling it domestic violence. They stopped calling it sexual assault programs. They stopped calling it, all of the other terms that we use. And they started calling them wellness centers. And in here, there was 94 recommendations that would help the reconciliation, the forgiveness, the bringing, in the talking circles, the bringing back the language, bringing back what you would call spiritual wellness. And this, and again in Canada, what's been cool is the missing and murdered Indigenous women, transgender and two-spirit. The candlelight vigils and the marches started in 2004 and have been going there. And then now in the United States, because of the Me Too campaign especially, that happened almost 4 years ago, we're now seeing that our people are not staying silent anymore. Our people, all of our tribes are beginning to speak up, and all of our tribes are beginning to tell the truth. And so we just wanted to, this Power Hour today, to think about if you have a secret. If you have a secret, where to begin to tell someone what that secret is so that you can emotionally get rid of that toxic energy. Woo, that was a cat. Yvette, your cat is staying in the screen. Okay, so so Kitty, what do you think about this? Kitty said, I like my masters to heal. Because my masters are more gentle with me, because my masters, I just, sometimes we call it apus, and Blackfoot is how you say kitty. So the kitty just kind of, okay, cool. So I love, you guys know I love animal treaties, because part of healing is making a treaty with your horses, making a treaty with your foxes. I've been privileged to have a fox family adopt me. I didn't adopt them. They adopted me 10 years ago. Especially during this pandemic. There's 4 of them, the parents, and then I have 2 kit foxes that hang around. And I swear one gets up there, and I think that I think that fox is either a tokan, beaver, because my one great uncle, he was born with a webbed foot that looked like a beaver's foot, and they used to say that he got stuck shape shifting, so his foot. So we called him Beaver, but I always think of that one time I was talking to the fox, and it looks at me, and I was talking to the fox, and I go, "Are you a tokan? Are you Beaver?" And it just like looks at me. Or then sometimes I look at that other little fox and I go, "Are you Atstanikiwa?" I know that all the grandmas look over us. And you know, so I was looking at the fox. I go, "Kistu, Atstanikiwa?" And you know, it's weird because sometimes the fox, when you make a treaty with the animal, they don't talk in English. They don't talk in French. And they don't talk in Spanish. They talk in telepathy. And sometimes when you make eye contact with an animal, they can talk to you. It's just like with humans too. So, okay, there we go again. We're staying black in the screen. So we'll have to, Yvette, I don't want to eject. Can you please? Because they can't see. Okay, so anyway. Kitty wants to. It can feel the energy. You know what? Animals, even bad animals that are, you know, bite and do stuff like that, or buck their people off, their horses. I think it's the energy I give off. They all want to come to me and be next to me, and so that is a blessing. So Apus is giving us a blessing. So I wanted to talk about, okay, so how do you let's talk about some healing things, and then these 94 recommendations. You know, my relatives up at Abutsapikani, which is around Brockett area in Alberta, they got triggered as soon as they heard that 215 bodies found. And so one of the things, rather than when you're getting triggered, it may be a small thing, it may be a big thing. Do something to honor the spirits of those 215 children. Do something, you know, either to go out and put pastaskan, which is tobacco, go out and maybe their spirits, because of the way it happened, they didn't get to cross over. You can have any of the ceremonies to help them cross over the Milky Way, to help them so that they're not stuck. So in Abutsapikani at Brockett, my relatives up there, they immediately started saying those 215 babies, children, needed to have a ceremony. So they're out getting stuffed animals, mainly teddy bears, and they just got 215 stuffed animals, mainly teddy bears, and they explained the history to all of their family, to the 5-year-old, to the 4-year-old, to the 10-year-old, to the 15-year-old, and they had a ceremony where they put all of they smudged them, they sang over them, they prayed for them, that these teddy bears would help if the spirit of those children is stuck or not in a good place, that it would let them know that we will never, never forget them. That we will never, never forget what they went through in that a residential school by those Christians. And so the teddy bears, and it's kind of an interesting because I posted a picture of, you know, our little relative, you know, and she had her little ceremonial dress on. She had her scarf, you know how those Blackfoots, we have our scarves, or some of you that go out right now, because I'm heading to a medicine camp. You know, when you go out to gather medicine, when you go to get your camas or your sweetgrass or your berries or your roots, your part of protocol is you dress up for the ceremony. So you wear your best dress, you wear your You wear you cover your head. You wear you don't come in shorts and jeans. That's anyway. I'm not gonna get. This is just auntie talking because my other pronouns are she, her, and badass auntie because we got it. If you want to be indigenous, dress like your ancestors, not like something you saw in a magazine. You know, that's anyway. So I wanted to just talk about that healing that happened with those teddy bears. And you know, so one of and during Memorial weekend this last week, some of the children that died, you know, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, I saw people go out and get teddy bears and put the teddy bear on their grave to decorate it. And I thought, what a healing thing to do. And what a healing thing to do even, you know, even now. One of over in Ontario, Shelley Sky, I hope you're looking, because when my last job in Ontario, Shelley Sky had given me a Treaty 3 teddy bear. And this is confession time. That little teddy bear during all of this pandemic, I would sprinkle a little of lavender on that teddy bear, and that teddy bear always sleeps somewhere in my bed. And I'm on this trip now because I'm going to a medicine camp with the traditional department of Seattle Indian Health Board, and we're just going to talking circle, go out and field trip and to look at medicine. And this morning, when I arrived at my hotel last night, because I went to St. Ignatius, I was looking in my suitcase and I forgot my teddy bear. And I felt bad because I've slept with that teddy bear for the last 63 weeks. You know, and it's for healing the little child inside of me. And even it's for healing, you know, I'm 65 years old, but the little child in me is still healing. Still learning how to take care of myself. Still making myself first. Learning how to say no. Learning to do joyful things. I call it recess. So I'm on recess. I'm doing the power hour, but as soon as I get off power hour, I'm on recess. So today, think about what is recess for you. And, you know, this is because in here, I mean, you know, this is like speed reading for you. There is beautiful things that came out of that Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And so I'm going to hold up another resource. It's a resource manual from the Aboriginal Foundation. And, you know, I don't know, I'm bringing this to the Seattle Indian Health Board, if these need to be reprinted, because it talks about not only understanding trauma, because remember, trauma is the gateway drug to addiction. Some people used to say marijuana was the gateway drug, but trauma is, we now know the link. The science teaches us that if you've had traumatic experiences when you were a child, under the age of 18 years old, or especially under 5 years old, that trauma unhealed is going to pretty much predict your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your it just affects, you know, your instinct. It affects, because, you know, Indians all have good instinct, you know. if you meet Indian people, they can just look at someone and their instinct sizes them up. But, you know, usually they won't say, because Indians have really good instinct, and I think people of color do, because we've had to be on guard. We've had to be on guard from genocide, racism, sexism, all of that stuff. And being on guard, you have a really good instinct, so you can read people. So think of it as a blessing. But I'm just holding this up because the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, they produced really good manuals, there's stuff that has been produced in the lower 48. You know, one of I just want to give a shout out to, you know, the trailblazers of Nanakoa. I want to give a shout out to the trailblazers of the elders with the white bison. I want to give a shout out to the trailblazers that started Native Wellness Institute. I want to give a shout out to, you know, we have, what's really cool is we have a lot of people who are still doing healing efforts in the lower 48 and also in Alaska. You know, when I was saying my prayers because I was over at St. Ignatius, and so I wanted to share a little bit of a story about Tamaki Law and one of the brave warrior men, Ken Bear Chief. And Tamaki Law, there's a man there named Blaine Tamaki. And he started to understand the history of what happened when the outsiders came, when the colonizers came. And in residential schools and in boarding schools, he saw what had gone on, and he believed from a legal point of view that there should be lawsuits against those who raped and sexually abused Indian kids. And so Tamaki Law, that's where I was a couple hours ago. And so I had to prepare yesterday. I went to Salis Kootenai, and Rosemary Kaye she showed me where the Indians go because they have the hot springs. My grandpa Sam we used to take him there because he was a cowboy. He broke every part of his body. And so we used to take him to those hot springs because he called them, and they had mud. There was like this mud, and you could get in the mud and would take grandpa there, and he would be pain-free for 2 to 3 months. And so I always, in my healing, I went there yesterday, and I prayed for over 3 hours because I knew I needed to go to St. Ignatius. And I got, you know, I went and got my favorite Thai food. You do all of these stuff to like make yourself, your mind, body, and spirit prepare you to do some of the healing. So I soaked all day. You know, I put out my medicines. I got Thai food. And then I listened to my Blackfoot, Sixakatepi, the Blackfoot elders, Alden Weaselhead, Leonard Bastine, our Weasel Traveler, Pita Sapu, which is Marvin Weatherwax Sr. He was a combat vet. Talk about a story there. He's also, of the 8 war bundles in our Blackfoot Confederacy, he's alive and well, and he has in his possession takes care of a war bundle. And then there was Jesse DeRozier, and they all, a lot of our healing, we have to look at our men who are healed and who can speak the language. So I listened to them for 3 hours last night before I went to bed. And so I'm just sharing with you, when you listen to your language, listen to the stories, and what was so gentle, because our Blackfoot men that have been transferred and who know the songs, like Alden was singing Crowfoot's song, and when they can tell, we found that during this pandemic, if we get them all together on Zoom, if we all, you know, get the Zoom warriors together, and they tell the stories in Blackfoot, and then they dialogue, and then they explain it in English. And somehow last night, just hearing, because the first 7.5 years of my life, all I heard was the language spoken. I was around just all language speakers, and it wasn't until we went on relocation that I started to only hear other languages in English. But hearing them speak, and so this is kind of, you know, insight into, you know, helping you with your healing. Sometimes just have the language around you. Have the singing around you. Oh, that water's good. Have the, and last night it was soothing because it reminded me of, just being with Grandma and Grandpa, telling the stories. And one of the stories that was really healing was Marvin Weatherwax Jr. was, because mummy is how you say fish. We weren't really fish eaters. We're more wild meat, buffalo, wild elk, and deer. And there was a story, and I really liked it because it was a story of when we were starving, because they tried to get rid of all of our buffalo. And one of the ways that they genocide you or colonize you is to, besides raping your children, is they take away your food source. And it was actually a spirit eagle came to Marvin's grandmother and spoke, in that telepathy that we spoke of before, spoke to the grandmother. Yvette, I'm sorry. Yeah, and the eagle spoke to the grandma and said, "You don't have to starve. You don't have to. You know you don't. We know your children are starving. We know you don't have much food." And the eagle actually telepathy spoke to the grandma and said, "There's all of this food in the water here. There's all of this food, and it's mummy." And so the eagle actually, he said, that's how us pitas, our pitas, how we what we feed on, and why we're so strong. We're spiritually strong. We're physically strong. And we're because of this mummy that we're eating. And so it was just this beautiful story of how the eagle came to Nitsitapi, the Blackfoot people, and showed them that this food source was available, just like the other roots and plants that they have shown us. So in when I was going along, and I had just I was thinking to myself, I'd bought this Thai food with tofu. So I was laughing to myself. I was like, what kind of animal is going to kind of come and tell me? Is it going to be like a bean curd spirit that's going to come to me and say, hey, guess what? Tofu is protein. Hey, tofu is good for you. You don't have to eat Doritos. You can eat tofu. Eh? So I was having my own humor, but I was just thinking, what a beautiful, story that Marvin Weatherwax Sr. And anyway, that's Blackfeet Community College has that recorded, and it's going to be available for anyone to hear the stories in the language. And so be thinking about just listening to your language, listening to who's a speaker, and then yourself. I have I'm old school, so I have like flashcards, but like, even I wanted to make sure, that I was saying Nixista Anista, my mother. Because I'd always say you scriptadaki, but just to make sure are my mothers, to talk about all my mothers, Aunt Melinda, Aunt Rita, Aunt Marie. I was just thinking, and then, Nina, Anista, to talk about all my fathers, because, as what I learned in our culture is that when some of them die, the other ones step up and become your new father. The other ones step up. So you're never fatherless. You're never motherless. You always have another, because it's kind of interesting, and I won't give his name because at first he was my uncle, now he's my brother. And I don't know if I move, because when all of my uncles died, he told me, I'm your uncle now. And so he is my uncle, but then lately he's been my brother, and so I don't know if and that's what happens in Indian culture. Sometimes our status, we transfer, and maybe that's what's going on, because now I call him brother, and he is my brother. You know, during this pandemic, even though the medicine line is closed, and these are just healing things that we can think about around these 215 children, is even though that we couldn't, we would text every day or call, and when I was having like, it's always, he checks on me just like my Uncle Gerald used to. Is everything okay? And then when we went through the rough spots, because we had 48 deaths in our tribe, and I knew them all, and I was close to them. And that in itself tells me that I got to be more gentle. We have to be more gentle with all the death that we've had during this pandemic time. And I think you guys are beginning to know that. And grieving. So it really helped me. It's interesting because my mom will be 83 pretty soon, and here we are out there at 78 Fahrenheit, we're cleaning the graves, and I told her, I said, Mom, I want to take time and clean Dad's grave and Aunt Melinda's grave. And it's kind of, where we took my brother's sweat rocks, because Ira got sweat from Edward Little Dog and Muffet, and those rocks are, anyway, they have a long story, Natus Okotuks, these rocks. So in their graves, we brought some of the sweat rocks, and we outlined the grave. And so I cleaned all the weeds and dug up everything and put fresh black dirt on it. And while I was doing that, I had this warm feeling that's the legacy. That's, in order, you heal from your grief when you keep the legacy of your ancestors alive. And I was, I had dirt underneath my fingernails, and it's interesting because even though it was that hot, I didn't feel hot. I had, of course I drank, pH water, electrolytes in it. I had that, but I felt this warm feeling. And then this is like a graveyard story. Typical Heart Butte Blackfeet. I look out. Everybody's got their truck and their powwow chairs. And then everybody brought food. My mom brought me, steak. She brought me chicken fried steak, the baked potato loaded with and then an ice cold water. And so everybody else out there had food. I mean, they had made food, and we were sitting in our powwow chairs, and everybody was visiting, and we were gathering. And that's the most important thing in this healing around these 250 children, is to gather with your people. And I said, Mom, here we are in the graveyard, and everybody's got their powwow chair up, got their umbrellas. and then we heard all the news, because some people we hadn't seen in 15 months. So we got to hear who was born, who graduated, who got divorced, and was it a good thing? Because you know how our people are. We just tell all the news, but the best part of all, since we're 98% vaccinated and we've all had 2 shots, is like, I would just say, you got 2 shots? They'd say, yeah. Oh man, we just started, we started hugging, and like a couple of my cousins, I was thinking, man, I don't think I hugged them that long, or that loving. It's just like we just held on and cried, because we hadn't got to hug each other like that in 15 months. And that's the blessing of these 63 weeks, is to begin to hug and just to be with people in a social atmosphere. So, okay, so back to the other thing that I wanted to share with you today, is a story around forgiveness. And it's why I went to St. Ignatius. At St. Ignatius, with Tamaki Law, they had 500 claimants. And claimants are against the Catholic Church over there, against the Jesuits. And from 1864 when they came, and that's, I had posted their original cabins, there was 500 claimants still alive who had been raped or sexually abused by the priests and nuns at St. Ignatius. And so that's why the work and healing, we have to describe it sometimes. Ken Bearchief and some of the staff of Tamaki Law interviewed all of those 500 claimants. And knowing him over the years, and when he was interviewing and helping with the interviews over at the Helena Diocese, 92 people, and helping get those people to tell the story, I saw what it did to Ken. And so I'm just saying, you have to take care of yourself. We have to not just run around like untreated codependents. Having been there myself, I know how that is, where you're exhausted, you don't know how to say no, and you're not in good standing, because you can only take people as far as you've gone, and you can't give away what you don't have. So this forgiveness thing today, even going to St. Ignatius, and so June 6, 2011, Tamaki Law got awarded $166.1 million to those 500 claimants who were raped and sexually abused by the Jesuit priests and the nuns at St. Ignatius. And whew, that is just a mouthful. That still hurts, and so there's still more forgiveness that needs to happen. So when I went out there this morning, because I knew I was coming over here, and I contacted Yvette and said, Yvette, can I do a power hour, because we're looking for Wi-Fi plus to visit. I always come visit here. And so when I went out there, I could feel my heart get more rapid. So I smudged off, I went and got my tobacco, I took a good drink of water, and when I walked in there, at first, it's all gated, and you know how Indians are, we always think to ourselves, so what, we'll just bust in the gate. Because I'm one of those, I don't like, being imprisoned or being inside. So when I could open the gate and go inside, and there was this beautiful tree. Beautiful, beautiful tree. So I started talking to the trees around there if they could help. Because I wanted to have some forgiveness to be able to not come on here today. And because some of our initial, remember, anger is hurt. Anger is hurt. It's okay to be angry about those 215 bodies found. And then while I was there, part of forgiveness is to pray for the perpetrators. And so they have all these statues of the Jesuits that were there, and they had all these photos. And so when I went around, I did my best to say, please let their souls be forgiven wherever they are. And please, can we come to a place where this is stopped, or where this is alleviated, where we begin to do the healing. And, and I took that pastascan, and, my dad always said, he said to take your tobacco in one hand and then get some of the cleanest black dirt, because we like to get like badger dirt, and you put them together. He said, but when you do that, you give your ancestors a smoke. And your ancestors, whatever the prayer is, they will answer that prayer. It might not be, by December 31st, or it might not be, it might be a couple of years, or it might be instant. You have to have the faith. And so I'd like to ask all of you, sometime today, if you could take your ceremonial tobacco, or any tobacco that you have, your asema, and go out and put it on the ground for those 215 children, the bodies that were found, and put it and pray for. It's okay to pray for yourself, because I wanted to say in this triggering, this past week, my Facebook Messenger and my texts and phone calls is people were just calling to say how they had been triggered and how they were working it out and how they were healing. You know, and one of the calls, you know, I was just thinking, and that beautiful person, I won't name the names, you know, but that beautiful person, she could barely talk because she was sick again. And as I was talking to her, I was just thinking, or when she had to do all that testimony, 8 hours of testimony to prove what happened to you when you were a child. And I was just thinking and you know, she had to go to the ER and they had to make sure it was a variant and she didn't had COVID. It was just the flu. But in that, I remember when my father died, I had 6 episodes of flu and one went to bronchitis because you're crying out loud. Your body is crying out loud. Sinus headaches, congestion, those kinds of, that's just your body telling you that you're grieving. And so this forgiveness, you know, thinking about the forgiveness, think of it as a goal. Because some of us right now, we need to take action. And so one of the action things that you can take in your family is go visit with the oldest members in your family. And they'll remember the stories of their parents. They'll remember, and you know, when we were trying to decide what the topic should be, I was talking to Jean Tagavon. We always talk, and Jolene and Robert Johnson and Levina. And I said, I think the topic it should be, I wished I would have listened, because I've heard so much of that lately. Because people will say, God, yeah, my grandma used to say these things, or she'd take me out, and I wish I would have listened. So one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is talk to your elders. And now that we're getting vaccinated, go take them some meat. Go take them a new powwow chair, or go take them, you know, or get them, you know, because I was looking at the graveyard. Some of my relatives still had their flip phone. I was thinking, you know, we got to help everyone get into technology. Bring them a gift and just go listen. And don't be looking at your phone. I mean, you know, it's elder abuse if you're looking at your phone and you got an encyclopedia of indigenous knowledge sitting before you. You got this elder. You got this one that remembers. But you know the ones that remember, they have clarity and they can remember all the stories. So go and gift them, because now that we can visit again, and ask them questions, you know, because I was just thinking now, you know, in part of our healing, we really have to, those that are alive or those that got triggered, because you might be the second generation or the third, but we got triggered when we heard that those 215 children's bodies were found. Yvette, what time is it? 12:53. Okay, Hey, thank goodness for friends, because I was so I wanted to in this remaining few minutes that we have here, be gentle with yourself. And you know, I had another group, they're an elders circle that I always would facilitate, and so we're gonna try June 7th. We're gonna do the talking circle on Zoom. Whether it's talking circles with your family or your family of choice, because a lot of times in recovery we have to go with our family of choice that thinks like we are, because you're going to burn out if you're with the family that's still using. the quote unquote social drinkers. What a bunch of bull, huh? Anyway, but just so go to the oldest members, and I say the oldest members because once we start the healing with the oldest members, it just trickles down. It comes and it trickles down, and you see it stop. And when you begin to see it stop, you begin to see children that have trust, children that have faith, or if they do develop an addiction, they know how to ask for help, and we know how to guide them towards help. So this past week was my mom decorates 42 graves, and it's sometimes a 3-4 week process, going out and getting all the black dirt and telling the stories. And I'm not saying that that it's not your way. I'm just saying find out ways where you can hear the stories. Because I was noticing, she'll be 83 in October, and I was noticing how, yeah, it hurt. We lost some. She lost her friends. We lost close people. But I was noticing what she does now. And then, I'll say, Mom, did you hear so-and-so died? And sometimes she hasn't heard. And she'll cry. And then almost like in a second like that, she'll start telling stories of what they did, what they accomplished, what they got through. And she's been telling me, because she'll call me Nellie. She'll say, Nellie, concentrate on the good memories. Concentrate, and so one of the, as we find out even the names, go get those teddy bears. Go get the ceremony for yourself. They used to say, heal the child inside. They used to. I had I just found this one button, and it says it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So I'm going to start wearing that button, because that can be all of our mottos. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. And so in our remaining minutes, think about what's your recess going to be. Because June 20th is coming. The solstice is phenomenal. The equinox and the solstice. What are you going to do on June 20th? I know some of our Thunderpipe bundles, some of our Beaver bundles are happening. But where you live, what are the gatherings of celebration that you're having? Because I think we all need to just get all of our relatives together and say, dang, we're just going to celebrate that we live, that we're alive, that we're all here. Because, people have forgiven, and people are transformed, and they're starting over. They're starting relationships over. I have a couple that they were not getting along at the beginning of the pandemic, and then all that time that they spent together, they fell in love, and they remade a vow. He even bought her this big old ring. This big old ring, because they had figured out that during the pandemic, spending all that time together and reflecting, they had figured they fell in love with each other. So maybe you need to get remarried. Because I was thinking, people that sleep in separate beds, boo-hoo, or maybe, I don't know, we need to get one giant bed. I don't know what you need to do, but reignite your friendships, reignite your romantic relationships, and reignite, the other, I was thinking about my niece. She's a lawyer at San Carlos. And she was saying that one of the best things that happened for her family is they got a dog. And I was thinking about, here she is, a lawyer, and her kids. I mean, she said that the best thing, that the medicine, so that imida medicine, maybe you need to get this cat. That's why I just love the cat that's just around. Maybe you need to reignite and start new friendships. May Tallow, our elder that passed away last year, May always told us,
today's the right to vote.
Oh yeah,
Indian Citizenship Day.
the Indian Citizenship Act was today, And thank you, Yvette. The right to vote. Oh my God, 1924. I think about that because, for some tribes they didn't get to vote like till around 1960. Well, remember to vote. And I was just thinking of all the lovely things of our current president, and then Kamala. She's going down south. She's going to ally with our people down south, people of color. So say a prayer for our president, say a prayer for Kamala as she does that. And would like to, I'm here at the headquarters. We want to thank all of you who did vote and are going to vote. And remember, we have to start ramping up here for what's going to happen in the next couple of years. So I'm going to say Kitaki to Matsuno. Tomorrow, Levina's on. And please listen because it's a very important case in the Coeur d'Alene, Colville area around land. Digital?
The Digital decision, but it was a North.
The Digital decision, but it's for us tribes that all before Canada and before United States, it's our territory. What's funny? It's still our territory spiritually. They can put all these borders, but the spirits still love us. And they don't stop at the border. But anyway, Levina's on tomorrow, and then Jean's on, and then yesterday, Robert, thank you for all your advice around letting go. If you see our team, Jolene, Shailene, Lori NewBreast, all of us, we all ally with each other. So we really want to thank you for coming to the Power Hour. And hey, send me a message, invite me over, and cook me something good, eh? You don't have to give me no presents. Just cook me something good. Get me some hot tea, and then we'll sit down and talk. So I'm going to say Kitaki to Matsuno and Kitsikako Mun. I love you, and I will see you later.